From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log, and we are partisan here. We have a point of view. Getting pretty tired of people telling us, oh, you have to get along with everybody. You have to listen to both sides, as we're plunging headfirst into fascism. Come on. You have absolutely no responsibility to be fair to the other side. They're bloody fascists. So the centrist is my biggest enemy. It's kind of like the old argument, what's worse, the evil person or the stupid person? The stupid person sometimes can do a lot more damage. The evil person has to get organized. They have to find followers. They have to have success. The stupid people, all they have to do is stumble along in their own stupidity. And stupidity is much more contagious than evil is. Evil works itself up against opposition. Stupid just grows and grows organically. So, no, I'm not at all ashamed to label myself as a partisan. There's a whole major American party that has crossed over a big red line. Nobody's going to gaslight me, try to convince me that it's going to do me or you or anybody else any good to compromise with them or to get along with them. All right, well, speaking of which, let's talk about some recent offenses of the regime, including continued support for Israel's final solution in Gaza. Also, the continued crimes against humanity surrounding America's immigration policies. It was an interesting week for the world economy when the Orange Menace basically said, let them eat tariffs. That's all pretty much baked in. The story has taken the back pages recently because of more outrageous news, but yeah, we'll have a slow burn on this. Prices will go up, inflation will go up, a recession will probably happen. We'll slog through, which is great news politically for those who oppose the regime. So bad news for people trying to get by, people trying to pay rent and buy groceries. But good news for those who want to see the regime toppled. Because of all their bad deeds, this might be the only thing that really brings them down. And we've been talking almost entirely about the Oval Office and the cabinet and the agencies of the executive office up till now, but Congress is finally sort of joining the game. They've done literally nothing in the, what has it been, 5 months? Yeah, 5 months since the regime took over. Congress has done absolutely nothing except rubber stamp and kiss the butt. But they're taking off their warm-up jersey and getting into the game with this big budget bill working its way through Congress. So let's try to make some sense out of all of this. Let's start with some good news. Here in my own Wisconsin, the so-called anti-riot bill has been dropped. So that's not going to happen. That's great. There's been a lot of this kind of legislation in states around the country. Simply put, this legislation would have made it really difficult to participate in protests and rallies. The general idea is that whenever more than a couple people are gathered together, if any one of them does anything illegal, so say you're having a big protest and there's 1,000 people and one person decides to break a window, if you're one of those 1,000 people where one of them broke a window, somehow you can be legally responsible. So anything that goes wrong, you are now an accomplice, subject to fines of up to $10,000 and imprisonment for up to 4 years. I mean, it's crazy legislation. And it's been tried. I'd have to look it up. I don't know if any of these bills have been successful. I don't know the answer to that. I have to look that up. But the story here, and the reason it's in the good news file, is that there was a bill proposed in Wisconsin which has been basically shouted down by the public. And the MAGA types in the Madison legislature read the writing on the wall, said, well, I guess this is not going to happen. So that's great. Chalk one up for the good guys. Political losses also recently. It's worth pointing out, Canada had their election, a week or two ago. They were all set to elect their own wannabe fascist, a MAGA type, before our own fascist in chief started making world headlines. And that election turned around in a big way, and they changed direction. So the Orange Man is personally responsible for losing his preferred candidate in Canada. The exact same thing happened in New Zealand. And I bring this up because the exact same thing just happened a couple days ago in Romania. Right-wingers losing where they were on track to win. And I think it's a pretty safe bet, especially if the economy doesn't turn around. I think it's a pretty safe bet that the fascists are going to lose Congress here in the United States, maybe both houses, in 2026. And this so-called big, beautiful bill, I'm just speculating here, not making any predictions. It could work both ways. If they finally pass it, if they finally find a way to pass it, which right now as we speak, they're having a tough time, it's going to just come around to bite them. It's going to be wildly unpopular. And if they fail to pass it, that's not any better for them because then they just show they can't get anything done. So either way, whether they fail to pass it or they pass it, I think the die is already cast. They come up losers either way. Again, it's not a prediction, just a little speculation. All right, while we're in the good news file here, what else? Well, still, it's a daily headline. Federal courts have blocked 2 major deportation efforts, these so-called expedited deportations. Like, no, got to give them time, got to give them the right to make their case. The Supreme Court, of course, refused to let the Orange Menace resume rapid deportations of Venezuelans using the Alien Enemies Act. Of course, he keeps defying these orders. Over the last week, at least 11 lawsuits where they came out on the wrong end, blocking them from gutting the voice of America. Anti-DEI orders in education have been halted. Tried to withhold federal funding from sanctuary cities. That was stopped by the courts. The regime tried to end collective bargaining rights for federal workers. Again, everything he does, blatantly illegal, unconstitutional, and the courts are keeping up. And not only are the orders of the regime illegal and unconstitutional, they're wildly unpopular. Every single policy item is fascist garbage. It's straight out of Project 2025 and even beyond, that nobody wants. I mean, this is insanity. At latest count, 152 executive orders. None of them worth the paper they're printed on. So, yeah, stop telling me to get along. Stop telling me to be nonpartisan. These are full-blown fascists. And if you're in bed with a fascist, if you share their values, if you share their policy positions, if you defend them, like all of his sycophants, his agency heads, his cabinet secretaries, with these embarrassing testimony in front of House and Senate committees. Yeah, if you sit with a fascist, you're a fascist. If you support them, if you fight for them, if you work for them, if you try to pass their legislation, it's a whole damn political party off the rails. And if you're not a fascist, at the very least, you're a fascist sympathizer, and frankly, I don't see the difference. Plus, we always have to remind ourselves this is following a 50-year Republican project, attacking everything good about America. This didn't just happen overnight. It's the culmination of very deliberate, long, and steady work by these guys. So no, I'm not bipartisan. This is an attack on democracy. It's an attack on decency. It's an unmitigated disaster. And we have to fight it on every front. And now, after all this while, the fascist regime finally moves to Congress with this so-called big, beautiful bill. They've tried it every other way. Department of Justice, already in action, taking revenge on political enemies. Good example of that. Alina Habba, one of the Orange Menace's personal attorneys, now an official at DOJ, prosecuting New Jersey Representative LaMonica McIver. She was the one caught up in that little scrum in the immigrant detention center. The IRS threatening the use of their power against political enemies. RFK Jr. doing his best to gut the entire public health infrastructure of this nation. Marco Rubio, under sworn testimony in front of congressional committees. You raise your hand and you swear to tell the truth. And then he gets up and he tells the same old tired lies about Abrego Garcia. Kristi Noem either doesn't know what habeas corpus is, or pretends not to know, or lies. We're never quite sure what Kristi Noem is doing. So again, she's either playing dumb or she's really dumb. I can never quite tell with some of these people. Immigrants have been sent to South Sudan in defiance of a court order. It all happened in a grand total of 17 hours. And it's the same old story. Migrants were given papers to sign, didn't have time to consult with lawyers or to make any case for themselves. Some of them didn't understand what they were signing. And all of these court orders say the same thing. 17 hours, 24 hours. No, that's not long enough. You got to give people notice. You got to give them reasonable time to make their case. You have to give them due process. So this just continues, the defiance, the lawlessness. The regime has talked about sending migrants to Libya. So now, in addition to the infamous Sikot prison in El Salvador, a torture chamber, a death camp, it's not a prison by any modern definition of the word. They want to include Libya, a failed state. Not sending Libyans, no. Sending people without due process to countries that aren't even their own. So yeah, renditions to Libya now being suggested. Infamous for abusive detention centers. Now, there's no agreement with Libya yet. It hasn't happened yet. But nobody saw this South Sudan thing happening. And just to repeat, again, these are not deportations. No, these are third countries notorious for rights abuse. The men sent to war-torn South Sudan, don't have the exact number here, 8 or 10 or something. A couple of them from Myanmar, from Vietnam, forced to sign papers not even in their language. No opportunity at all for due process. We're hearing individual anecdotes about trains being stopped. This was a story from a couple weeks ago. A passenger train stopped in North Dakota. ICE agents board the train, question everybody. This is right out of a Nazi movie. They walked the full length of the train, questioned every single passenger about their citizenship status. How would you do in that situation? The agents questioning you, not showing you a badge number, not giving their name, in many cases not even showing their face. They wear masks. Do you carry your papers? Do you have the wrong look? Do you have an accent? Do you have brown skin? Can you imagine? Can you imagine the terror when you know on the other end of this could possibly be a death camp in El Salvador or South Sudan or Libya? This is the country we live in now. That mother and her daughters a few weeks ago, their house was broken into by a gang of these masked agents, forced the mother and her daughters in their underwear out into the yard, confiscated their phones and cash, left this poor family with no money and without their phones. They took that with them. It turned out they were in the wrong house. That didn't matter. They still treated them like garbage, and they confiscated their property, their money, and they humiliated them and terrorized them. This is the regime. This is the country you live in. And now making its big entrance onto the scene, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Which, by the way, I didn't know this. I had to look it up. Because I got tired of them calling it the Big Beautiful Bill. It's obnoxious. So I looked up, all right, what's the House resolution number and title, actually? What's the official? Because I wanted to use that. Well, it's House Resolution 11, and its title is the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's the actual title they gave it. That's how far up his ass Republicans are. These are the same guys who want to put him on money and put him on Mount Rushmore and start naming airports and government buildings after him. Well, I won't go into too much detail about the bill itself. There's a long way to go. While I'm speaking, it's not even through Rules Committee yet, let alone passing the House. Of course, with any budget, it's all about policy. It's about programs that you cut, programs that you spend money on. So, for example, the green energy tax credit, gone. Cuts to Medicaid, though they'll deny it, will be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I've seen estimates as high as $800 billion, resulting in at least 10 million Americans kicked off of Medicaid without the ability to replace that health insurance on their own. So they'll just simply be uninsured. Supplemental nutrition benefits, SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, big cuts there because why not? Let's be cruel. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they're going to try to destroy CFPB, which saves Americans billions of dollars every year. Regulations cut to the bone, environmental regulations, just any regulation you can imagine, it's on the chopping block. Depending on what analyst you talk to, up to $5 trillion added to the national debt from the party that used to brag about being deficit hawks. On the tax cuts, one breakdown I saw, the super wealthy, the 0.1%, would receive the largest absolute tax cuts with an average gain of nearly $390,000. As a group, they'd be getting about 25% of the total tax cuts. The next tier, the top 20%, not including that top 0.1. So high-income households earning around $217,000 or more is how they measure that, would receive over 2/3 of the total tax reductions. The middle class, as defined at least in this analysis, $51,000 up to $217,000 annual income, they would see modest tax cuts averaging around $2,800 per year. So for all of these cuts, all of this wealth transfer, middle-class folks will benefit to the tune of about $2,800 a year. But much of that $2,800 would be offset by reduced government benefits, especially Medicaid, which a lot of these people rely on. All right, let's talk about the working class. This analysis puts that range from $17,000 to $51,000. Wow, $17,000. That's working poor. Well, they would see a very small tax cut, or in some cases, a net loss once the spending cuts are considered. So a small tax cut, but impacted by reduced government services. For some, for most, hard to say, but on average, according to this analysis, people in this group could lose about $700 of income. And then when you talk about the lowest income Americans, those who earn less than $17,000 a year, this group, each person in this group, projected to lose over $1,000 on average in after-tax and transfer income. Because a lot of these people don't pay any tax at all, or if they do, very, very small tax. And they rely, of course, more on government benefits, which are going to be cut. So when it's all said and done, the lowest income Americans will be the losers by an average of about $1,000 a year. The people who can least afford to lose $1,000 a year. The bottom 10% of Americans on average would lose about 2% of their annual income. And for what? For what? So they can realize their 50-year project of turning this nation into a mean, cruel, right-wing, authoritarian regime. God forbid the government serves the people in any way. No, it doesn't fit their selfish, dog-eat-dog, nihilist philosophy. Every man for himself. Winners win. Losers can suck it. It doesn't even make sense on their own terms. And this is where the stupid comes in. On their terms, and these aren't my terms, I'm talking about what they want. They want the economy to always be growing. They want growth. They want manufacturing. They want the country to be bustling. You know what? You give money to people who need it, to poor people, to the working poor, to the working class. The more money you put in their pockets, the more money they spend. They spend everything you give them because they need things. They have to. And the more they spend, the more the economy benefits. Tax bases grow. Corporate profits grow. Consumption grows. All the things you want. Investors, dividends grow. These are the things you want. So this is not only wildly and unnecessarily cruel from a decent humanitarian lefty position, it makes no sense even from your right-wing capitalist perspective. But the best possible scenario, I think, is also an extremely realistic scenario, that they fail miserably. Their failure will be historic. It'll be monumental. The Orange Menace, Project 2025, the whole fascist project, the 50-year Republican project, will go up in flames in a colossal conflagration. And they are on the clock, and they know it. They know they have to get this thing done. Things only happen in odd years, because even years are election years. This is 2025. As soon as the calendar turns over to 2026, it's an election year. And getting anything done in Congress becomes nigh impossible. So they know the clock is ticking. They know they have to get this done in this odd year. And this is one of your odder years. Well, speaking of elections, I want you to resist the call from those who are already thinking about midterms and, God forbid, the next presidential election. We can't wait. Things are happening too fast. Real-world consequences are happening. Children around the world are dying of hunger by the thousands, possibly before it's all over by the millions because of things like cuts to USAID. We haven't got time to wait around for elections. People are hurting right now, today, losing health care, losing their jobs, incomes, because of the let them eat tariffs policy, unable to pay rent, meet the mortgage, feed the kids. People are suffering right now, today. And that suffering is going to exponentially explode if this big, beautiful abomination of a bill is passed. So, no, the time is right now, today. So don't let these people tell you, get out and vote. Of course I want you to vote, but that is way too far off. We need action right now. Direct action. Mutual aid. If we cannot depend on a decent, moral, we the people government to provide for our needs, then we're just going to have to provide for each other's needs for a while. And that is mutual aid. Not just charity, not just helping out your neighbor, although those things are fine. No, mutual aid is direct action. It's organizing. It's direct, it's intentional, it's tangible, it's real. Organize your workplace, your church, your school, your labor union, your neighborhood, your apartment building, your softball team. Wherever you gather with your people, organize for mutual aid. Plan and conduct civil disobedience. Protests and rallies are good. I want you to be out there every day, every weekend. I want you to be hollering and singing and carrying your signs. All well and good. But direct action means civil disobedience. It means throwing your body on the gears of the system. If they expect us to live quietly and without complaint in a system that abuses us every day, that terrorizes us, that takes our money, takes our spirit, takes our bodies, then we have to shut down that system. If we don't have a decent, moral, we the people government that will make the necessary reforms in an unjust system, then we have to shut down the system. I admire the creative ways people have found to do this sort of thing, from Rosa Parks sitting at the front of the bus to sit-ins at lunch counters, occupying public buildings, activists chaining themselves to redwood trees, mass boycotts, targeted boycotts, rent strikes, tax strikes. Get with your people. We're in the middle of our Walmart boycott right now. Please make that permanent. Target boycott begins June 3rd. Please make that permanent. June 2nd here coming up is another Moral Monday, big event planned in the nation's capital by the Poor People's Campaign to protest this abomination of all omnibus bills. June 6th, D-Day anniversary protest, veterans protesting to end fascism in the United States. June 14th, No Kings Day. All the major organizers coalescing for this one: Indivisible, 50-51, Hands Off, No Kings, The People Dissent. And as always, I encourage you to go to generalstrikeus.com so we can grow the General Strike movement. All right, there it is. Find this podcast on your favorite platform or on my website, charlespurcell.com. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Join me on Substack and Blue Sky. Write to me, charlespurcell@gmail.com. Peter Donalds wrote and performed the theme music. All right, I love you. See you out there.